just do a little comparison, a little collar comparison. So this is Zorro's normal SuperFlex collar. SuperFlex, it's very flexible, very bendy. Also, why this would be not appropriate for a low line of draft. If you had this hitched to a low line of draft on a vehicle, it would put weight here and it would crunch up the bottom and you would end up with a vise. So I use this collar for my hyperbike, and if Zorro pulled my easy entry, it would also be used with that. He pulls it sometimes, but it's not my favorite anymore. I just prefer to bomb around in the hyperbike, so that's what we usually do. This is a 14-inch. So you'll put it on him, or your pony, however. Wrap it around, slide that in, push it down, and then buckle it. Typically these buckle on the first hole. Sometimes you can get them onto the second hole. That's the highest I've ever been able to get it. So there'll be a little space here. I can run my hand down. It's not choking him. It's not gaping where there's a huge space here. And then you can see how far back that comes on his shoulder. Too hot. It doesn't cover here a whole lot more than the deluxe collar does. You just have this little bit of added strap here. I haven't had that be an issue. When he gets sweaty, he just sweats and the sweat runs down and he cools off and dries. So I haven't had it be an issue. I do love this collar. I was prepared to not to because of all the bad press that the Euro style collar gets, but I love it. Zorro loves it. It's a comfortable collar. It does its job. So with a horizontal line of draft, I would not use it with a low line of draft ever. Yes. But I do suggest a martingale to keep that front down and to keep it centered. A false martingale. So I do suggest to have that just to keep the front of that collar down nice and centered on him. So this is the SuperFlex. Okay, next up is the Comfy collar. This one is meant to go with the Comfy Fit harness. Some differences are the buckles here. They're just a little neater, sleeker. They're sewn right onto that ring. The SuperFlex, that's an adapter that's put on. So the Comfy collar, as compared to the SuperFlex, is just a tiny bit stiffer. It's just sleeker. It's a bit of an upgrade, I would say. Like it's just a fancier collar. So I'll put this one on Zorro. This collar, because of the collar cap is just a titch wider. Come on. This part's a little bit wider, so you can actually get that buckle to buckle up a little bit further on this style, unless it's too small for your horse, and then it won't. But if it's fitting right, you'll be able to do that. This side is already on the second fit. You can get your hand in there. This one has a little bit more room compared to the SuperFlex, and as you can see, it comes back quite a bit further. So that's something to consider when you add the saddle here, whether or not you're going to get any pinching between the back of this collar and the front of your saddle. If you can't get your saddle far enough back on your pony, then this collar might not be the right one. This collar is tricky for your small, narrow minis and small ponies because it is bigger. It's just bigger. Even when it's downsized to the smaller sizes, this part is wider, this part is wider. It comes back. I think this would work with your a little bit questionable line of draft where you're just not quite low enough for collar and hames, and it's not quite horizontal. I think many of the minis would be comfortable in this style. So this is one to consider for when you're kind of in that gray zone there. But do keep in mind it's still a soft collar. It shouldn't be used for pulling sleds. It shouldn't be used for pulling sledges with rocks and stuff on it. It's not meant really for pulling wagons, really heavy loads. It's just not meant to do that really. So again, that's my opinion on this style collar. You can do some of your own research and maybe do some of your own investigating on it. I know I've tried different collars with different lines of draft and saw how my ponies handled it. And if you are able to do that, I suggest you do that and video it and see how they handle the different weights at the different lines of draft with the different kinds of collars, so that you have a better feel for what your horses can handle and what they prefer. So next we're going to look at the all-purpose collar from Broadhead. Okay, this is the all-purpose collar from Broadhead. I had called and asked them if they would do a couple things to make this just fit the little horses a little bit better. I wanted the rim to be a little bit smaller and this part to be very nice and flat and not have that little bit of a roll to it, and be just a bit soft. This does squish under your fingers a little bit instead of be hard like a rock. A lot of the big draft horse collars are just super hard, which is great for really heavy loads and when they really have to lean into that collar, and they often also will use a pad. But I just found that with these little horses and these little shoulders, the collar, the pad, all that stuff is too much stuff. And it just makes things not fit well, and they kind of bump on them, bump on their shoulders. And so I just had a few things that I was hoping they could fix on this to make it fit smoother and lay better across their shoulder, and they came through for me, so that was really nice. This specific collar has what's called a no choke. So what it means is that down here at the base of the collar there is no stuffing. The stuffing stops on each side. And this helps if Zorro has to pull a heavy load up a hill. He'll want to put his head down to pull, and this gives him room to do that without feeling like he's choking a little bit on that stuffing. So this collar has the lever for putting on and off. That seems to work really great for the minis. For light pulling with the draft horses it's good, but I've heard from my draft horse friends for heavy work the buckle's better. The lever can sometimes open when they're really pulling hard and there's a lot of pressure on the top of that collar. So that's something to keep in mind depending on what size equine you're driving. So we'll put this on him just to show. When you put it on, you don't open it all the way because you'll break the stuffing that's in here and make a crease, and you definitely don't want a crease in your collar. So you just let it open kind of as big as it will, and you just slide it on. Come on, bud. It's really hot. In Montana here, we've been having snow, sleet, rain, and then all of a sudden today it's in the 70s and it's hot and we're melting a little. So sorry about that. So we'll slide that on him and then buckle it. And this one is a 14-inch. I did measure him in the winter when he had his winter hair. If I was going to drive him in it now, I might want to put just a small felt pad at the top here, just to kind of lift it up some, because there's a bit of space. But you do want to be able to put your hand in there flat like so, and run your hand along here and have it be very smooth and no gaps, and have it lay nice and flat, which this collar does. It doesn't twist, and of course it can come forward like so, but once in draft it's not going to bounce. It's going to just sit nice on his shoulder and lay right along with that angle of his shoulder there. So I really do like these collars. They're nice, they're lightweight. Some of them can just be so heavy on the minis and it's just, you know, awkward. But when he downsized the rim, he downsized this a little bit, and when he made this softer, just lightened the whole thing. So it's actually a really nice collar. I really do like it. Something to keep in mind when you're putting collars on is, so Zorro's roached, but it's, you know, it's a soft roach. So I lay that over that's under the collar so it lays flat. If your pony has a lot of mane, you're going to part that mane and lay this right down on their neck. Don't just lay it over the mane and let the mane be all under it. You'll get rubs and stuff because that mane will cause friction between the neck and the collar. Part that mane, get all the hair out from underneath that collar, and just have that collar laying flat on their skin, so that it does not cause any friction with the extra hair that can get caught under there. Same goes for when you're measuring. If your pony has a lot of hair, part that hair where you measure, so that you're not adding in an extra inch, half inch of hair in that measurement that is going to make your collar not fit right. So keep that in mind when you're doing that. But here's the Hames. I like these ones for this collar. They're quite lightweight. These would not be appropriate for heavy harrowing, heavy logging. I think they might bend. But for easy entry, marathon vehicles, even if you wanted to use it with your hyperbike, these would be perfect. So I like the lightweightness of them because it just doesn't add added weight to the pony. You know, they're little, so we want to help them out as much as we can. These have the flexible rein turrets, and I do like that better than the fixed. So these are, again, my personal opinions. Take them or leave them, kind of a deal. Make sure that your hames are lining up in that groove on the collar, and that they fit down into that groove really nicely. And so I talked to Broadhead about, they were wanting to kind of stick up at the top here, and so he bent those just a bit for me to get them to lay flat. And then when this goes into draft here, you know, keep in mind I use this with the low line. It's going to pull that collar back and set it right back on his shoulder, and that is going to allow him to use that front of his shoulder to pull that weight. It won't make him use his back, and it won't collapse on him when he really leans in. It's going to keep its shape and stay nice and stiff. So that is why I like this style collar in hames for the low line of draft, for the way that it will keep its shape and do its job and help the pony with its work instead of hinder it at all. So as usual, if you have any questions about any of this, please leave a comment. Or shoot me an email at marketing@chimacumtack.com, and I'll do my best to answer or find someone who can answer it. Again, I work with the ponies. That's what I have. That's what I own. I also have access to draft horse people because my driving club has Percherons and Fjords and Halflingers and Mules. And they drive big teams, they drive little teams, they drive singles, so I can get help. If you guys need help and you don't have access to that, I do, and I'm happy to ask for you.